What's up, everybody? Welcome back to A People's Historian, the show where we read about half an hour of history together. My name is Jason Kishinev, and we're reading Defining Moments in Black History by Dick Gregory. Reading chapter 5, chapter 4. I don't think we'll quite polish that off today. Maybe in the next episode. We'll have to see. Remember, if you like the episode, if you like what you hear, hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you get notified when I make a new video, because YouTube has been known to unsubscribe people. Let's dig in, shall we? The death of Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye. Man, what a beautiful brother. You never met a kinder, more gentle, and more loving human being than he was. But what happened to him was so sad. Leading up to his death, his behavior was so unpredictable that I believe the mob was trying to control him by supplying him with drugs. I'd go out to Marvin's house sometimes, and Marvin and a bunch of guys would be playing ball all day, and I just never associated being hooked on drugs with having all that physical energy. But that was Marvin. A couple of times I carried him to my farm and cleaned him out. One time, Marvin was going to do a concert in Philly or Washington, D.C. I said I'd take him home with me that night after the concert. He said he just didn't feel like going. So I told him, then I'm going home with you. Now, what happened that angered me so bad was this. When I went home with Marvin, I saw all this white powdery stuff on a table at his place. I found him in another room and told him what I'd seen. I said, "Man, what are you doing?" He started complaining about how the maids had left some cleanser on the table, like I'd never seen cocaine before. Then he said, "I hope you didn't throw it away." Yeah, it'd be a shame if I threw that spilled cleanser away. Anyway, I just said, what I'll do is tomorrow I'll go to the health food store and buy you the combination of stuff that I use to help with detoxification. The next day, when I made to go out to get him some of my sobriety concoction, he said, "Here, go over and ask the money man, the white boy, to give you the money." I found the dude he was talking about. White boy. He said, "Dick Gregory." "Oh, Dick. Love you, man. Wow. Can I help you?" I said, "Marvin told me to come over and get some money. I'm going to the health food store." I didn't want to come over, but soon as I said the word money, that was the end of the "oh, Dick, I love you" bullshit. The white guy said, "Marvin doesn't have the right to ask for money." So I went back to Marvin and said, "Why'd you humiliate me like that? I got a pocket full of money, man. I don't have to ask some white boy for money because you sent me, and then have him tell me you don't have a right to ask for nothing." I called Lil, my wife, and said, "If Marvin calls me, don't even tell me he called." Then, pow! Lil called a few days later and said, "Marvin's just been killed." That was April 1st, 1984. Then his main people called me, and the dude told me Lil was trying to get you because Marvin said, "If Gregory doesn't come to get me out of the house, my daddy will probably kill me." Now let me tell you the story. What happened was Marvin's daddy was a pedophile, and he had 2 little boys he was bringing to the house where Marvin's mother was dying from cancer. Marvin was there in his pajamas giving his mother some medicine when his daddy came in. So Marvin said to his daddy, "You can't do this," meaning bring boys there. Marvin's daddy went off. He told Marvin, "Fuck you, this is my house. You gave this house to her," meaning Marvin's mother. I guess he thought that made the house his. "I don't believe you, my son, anyway. That woman is going to bed with every N-word out there. You ain't my son. That's why you give everything to her and you ain't give nothing to me. And Marvin hit his daddy. And his daddy went and got the gun and pow. Maybe the only surprising part about Marvin being killed by his daddy was that it took so long to happen. Marvin was born in Washington, D.C. in 1939, the second of 4 kids, and almost from the beginning, his daddy, who was a minister, started beating on him. Marvin sang from an early age, and that, together with his mama's encouragement, kept him sane. He still had his daddy to deal with, though. When Marvin was in his teens, things with his daddy got so bad that Marvin Sr. used to kick him out of the house. Marvin joined the Air Force, but didn't like that too much, so when he came home again, he went back to singing. He made his way to Detroit, where he met Berry Gordy of Motown. He became a session musician playing drums before releasing records of his own. At first it looked like he couldn't give them away. But then in 1962 he came out with the song Stubborn Kind of Fellow. And there was no stopping him after that. He sang duets with Kim Weston on It Takes Two and Tammy Terrell on Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing. Then came Marvin's mega hits. He recorded I Heard It Through the Grapevine in 1968 and What's Going On 1971. If anybody hadn't heard of him before that, they sure knew who he was afterward. Then in 1973 he put out the album Let's Get It On, which was about exactly what it sounds like. Maybe only Marvin could have gotten away with that title. Then he did it again in 1982 with the song Sexual Healing on his album Midnight Love. That was his biggest hit of all. 2 years later came the tragedy with his daddy, and it was all over. After he died, Marvin's sister called me and said, "We're holding things up till you give us the okay. Would you come out here and do the funeral?" It was bittersweet to be given the honor of eulogizing one of my dearest friends. You can still hear Marvin's records. Hear that ache of desire in his voice when he sings, "Let's get it on." Hear that pleading in his soul when he calls for peace and love and what's going on. He influenced a lot of singers, touched a lot of people. I hope my brother has finally found some peace. The Cosby Show. I mean the Cosby Show in more ways than one. When the show I Spy hit TV in 1965, it was the first time in the history of this planet that a black man could stop, pull out a gun, and shoot. And he could shoot a white man. I had never seen that. Neither had anybody else. Everybody had seen white boys do it. All you had to do was turn on a TV day or night and see that. But a black man? People saw that and said, "Man, what is this?" Before that, black folks had to wrap their guns in 12 towels and put them under the car seat. That's why they couldn't shoot nobody but other black people, because by the time you finished unwrapping all that stuff, those white boys you were mad at were gone. But that was the whole thing about I Spy. It was comical because Cosby was a funny guy, but it was powerful too. And it couldn't have worked the same way with two black men, because when you saw Cosby and Robert Culp together, you saw they were equals. They were government agents traveling all over the world. They posed as a tennis player and his trainer, but they were packing heat and they could use it. Only thing about it was, wherever they went, Culp always got the girl. That's why Cosby told his stand-up audience one time, I want to film I Spy in Africa. Bob Culp wouldn't get the girl then. That cracked me up. The Cosby Show debuted on NBC in 1984. Went to #1. Cosby played a doctor named Huxtable. You ever heard of anybody named that? I didn't think so. But the name doesn't threaten white folks. That's the whole reason behind it. Until we can see through that kind of bullshit, we will keep going down the wrong trail. Why wouldn't you think white folks loved him already? Little white children riding on his back, eating Jell-O, eating tapioca out of his ears. Another thing about the Cosby Show, you've got a dark-skinned man and his darker-skinned wife, and one of their 5 children looks practically white, and another one looks even whiter than her. Tell me what that's all about. Now you've got the whole mess with Cosby being accused of raping women. I condone none of this. Women are God's gift to the world. I do pray for him and his family that the truth will come out. Now, I'm not going to tell you he did or he didn't, but think about this. Why are they talking about jail time for Cosby when no other rich person goes to jail for doing anything? Athletes can do anything they want to and nothing happens to them. Big business pays the government billions of dollars in penalties for this or that crime, but they don't even have to admit they broke a law, and nobody goes to jail. In the 1990s, Bill Cosby was getting ready to buy NBC. White supremacy came in and said no. You see, there's a thing called racist white folks giving what I call a liberation holiday. That's when white folks throw us a bone. That's what Cosby's show was. When you put this show on and it shows black folks doing well, white folks can't wait to watch it. Then the racists can say, what are you blacks complaining about? Cosby went to school and got a good education. What's wrong with the rest of you? Kids on that show had to be better than white kids just to be accepted. They'd go to fancy places like art galleries on Saturday all dressed up, while rich white folks were wearing cut-off jeans and going to the park. That's what you call a liberation holiday. That was the game. But that's all white supremacy wanted us to have, a show. When Bill Cosby was negotiating to buy NBC and get some real power and put on the kinds of shows he wanted to put on, that's when white supremacy killed his son. They say he was robbed and killed on the highway. Think again. Ask yourself a question. If white children on the Jell-O pudding commercials loved Cosby so much, how come he couldn't get a commercial after his son was killed? No more Jell-O commercials, but Cosby didn't kill anybody and neither did his son. What's this about? Cosby knew something that most folks didn't know. That Mercedes he bought his son had reboots. You get a flat, it reboots itself. But they said Cosby's son was stopped on the highway because he had a flat. Why? Cosby knew that wasn't really what happened. Do you really think Cosby's son got out of his car to call a white woman and she showed up in a mink coat, miniskirt, and high-heel shoes to help him change a flat when all he had to do was push a button and the flat would have changed itself? Bill Cosby knew that. I'm confused about the tire fixing itself. He almost sounds serious. I thought he was joking. But tires don't change themselves. If you look at the police report, and I read the whole thing, there was no robbery. That's why they call it an attempted robbery and a failed robbery. When his body was found, Cosby's son had $6,000 in cash, all his credit cards, and his cell phone on him. No robbery. Then 6 months later, they arrested an American who was a Russian immigrant and charged him with the killing. But when he checked, it turned out that guy was in Mexico the night of the killing. Bill Cosby knows all this. Michael Jordan's father was killed on the side of the road too. Sound familiar? It was the same thing with Tiger Woods. Although Tiger Woods was not killed on the side of the road. Tiger Woods had to win 4 more Masters to tie Jack Nicklaus and 5 to be the all-time champion. That would have meant a black man being the best of all time. So he gets caught cheating on his wife and his name smeared in the press. White supremacy at work. I know somebody who saw Tiger Woods when he came to the hospital. She told me that if nobody had told her it was Tiger Woods, she wouldn't have known it. He was unrecognizable from a mob whipping is what some people are saying. So what did white supremacists do? Here's what I think happened. They went to Tiger and said, Tiger, we've got a law called the Mann Act, which M-A-N-N, which prohibits taking a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. We'll find a little 17-year-old girl and say you brought her to Sweden to watch you play golf. You could get 20 years in prison for that. Now let's sit here and talk like reasonable people. You can either do the 20 years, or we can make a deal now and you can go back, play for a while, and then on worldwide TV, you're going to pull something in your back so the whole world can see it. Then eventually you have to retire. In 2014, he was the #1 golfer in the world. Now he's not even in the top 200. He's already talking about retiring. That's what this is about. Toni Morrison wins the Nobel Prize for Literature. In 1993, Toni Morrison won the biggest prize a writer can win, the Nobel Prize in Literature. Toni Morrison was born Chloe Ardelia Wofford in 1931 in Ohio. Her parents were part of the Great Migration. They had come to Ohio to escape the South, but they brought a little of the South with them, and when Morrison was growing up, they told her stories from down there, black folk tales. So storytelling was part of her life from the beginning. People know Toni Morrison as a writer, but she started out doing other things. After getting her bachelor's degree in English from Howard University and her master's from Cornell, she taught at Texas Southern University and then Howard. After that, she became a book editor at the biggest place there is for a book editor to work, Random House. She signed up a whole lot of black writers like Tony Cade Bambara and Angela Davis. Then in the early 1970s, she started writing books herself. When she was in college and graduate school, she studied the works of William Faulkner, and just as the sentences in Faulkner's novels are almost musical, Toni Morrison's writing has a musical quality to it too. You read her sentences and you see and feel a rhythm going on. Her novels are The Bluest Eye, Sula, Song of Solomon, Tar Baby, Beloved, Jazz, Paradise, Love, A Mercy, Home, and God Help the Child. A lot of her novels are set in the past, early in the 20th century or even in the 19th. They're about black families, relationships between men and women, and the past coming back to haunt you. Mostly, though, they're about how black people live, how we talk, how we feel, how we hurt, how we love, how we respond to racism, how we are. Some of the books have supernatural things going on, just like in some of the black folks' tales her family told her when she was growing up. Guess the girl was listening. Talking about how black folks feel in Beloved, not far from the end, 2 characters are talking. One is called Paul D. The other is called Stamp Paid. That sister can sure come up with some names for her characters. So Paul D has seen and been through a lot. He says to Stamp Paid, tell me this one thing. How much is an N-word supposed to take? Tell me, how much? Stamp Paid says all he can. And Paul D comes back at him with the best response. Really the only response. Why? 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 Yep, 5 times. And right there, Toni Morrison nails it, because at the bottom, that's what it all comes down to. All the pain and frustration, all the mess black folks have to deal with. You have to struggle 3 times as hard as anybody else just to make it through the day. Mae Jemison. I keep saying it, and I'll keep on saying it. Anywhere you go, there's a black person kicking ass. The thing about it is, you can't wait until there's already a black person kicking ass somewhere before you decide to go there and kick some yourself. Doesn't have to be like basketball where you know 100 other black guys are trying to do it, so you figure it's okay to do it, for you to do it too. Sometimes you've got to be the first. Shirley Chisholm didn't see any black woman running for president before she decided to do it. The way she told her was somebody had to do it first. So the next time you think about doing something and you hear somebody say, oh man, black people don't do stuff like that, think about Shirley Chisholm and think about Mae Jemison. When Mae Jemison was growing up in Chicago in the 1950s and 60s, she didn't see any black astronauts or female astronauts. For one good reason, they didn't exist. That didn't stop her from wanting to be one. And she didn't just want to be an astronaut, she knew she was going to be one. That's the kind of confidence black folks need in this world. But she also knew it wasn't going to happen by itself. And that's why she worked her tail off. She got into Stanford University on a National Achievement Scholarship and was in her last year there when the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, put out a call for civilians to apply to the space program, especially women and minorities. Now, Mae Jemison could have applied right there, but she knew 2 things. One was, as determined as she felt, the competition was stiff, so she'd better have a backup plan. Another was that the more impressive she made herself, the better the chances that they'd pick her. So that sister made herself into one impressive human being. She went to Cornell University Medical College and became a doctor. Then she joined the Peace Corps, working as a medical officer in Sierra Leone and Liberia, but wasn't but 26 years old. She looked like a kid, and folks over there tried to treat her like one, but she let them know what kind of person they were dealing with. Then she came back to the United States and applied to NASA. She and 2,000 other folks, and she made it. That's how she became the first black woman to get accepted to NASA's astronaut program. A few years after that, in 1992, she went into space on the shuttle Endeavour. Stayed up there 8 days, doing all kinds of experiments related to weightlessness and motion sickness in space. Several other black astronauts are Leland Melvin, Robert Satcher, and Stephanie Wilson, among others. So when you're counting the places where black folks are kicking ass, you can add outer space to that list. And that's good, because you're not getting my black behind up there. His, obviously. I'd love to go. Although I'd be scared shitless. Especially of landing. Maya Angelou. Most people know that Jesse Owens ran like nobody's business, and Jackie Robinson was the first black baseball player in the major leagues. They kept it simple. Some folks, though, do so many things in their careers that a lot of people don't know what they were best known for, because they're not just one simple thing to focus on. Here's an example for you. Melvin Van Peebles. That brother has been a movie director and a novelist and a playwright and a composer and, you ready for this one? A Wall Street trader. You might think that after all that more folks would know who he is, but he's got so much stuff going on that it all competes for your attention. You don't know what to focus on, so you don't focus on anything. All people know is his name, if they know that. They hear it and go, yeah? Who is that again? Maya Angelou might be another example, except everybody knows she wrote I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, a book about her life. And most people know she recited her poem on the pulse of morning at Bill Clinton's presidential inauguration in 1993. But like Melvin, you almost don't know what to focus on with Maya because her gifts are so vast. People should know what she did, though, because she was something else. What happened to her when she was a child has been told before, but it's worth telling again. She was born in 1928 in Missouri. Her name was Marguerite Johnson, but she got the name Maya because her older brother called her Maya's sister. Wow, I did not know that. When she was 3, her parents split up, and her daddy sent her and her brother to live with their grandmother in Arkansas. This was during the Depression, but her grandma was one of the few black people around who had any money because she owned a general store. She lent money to black folks and white folks. A few years later, Maya's daddy came through again, and this time he took the kids to live with their mother in St. Louis. When Maya was 8, she was molested by her mom's boyfriend. She didn't tell anybody except her brother, but he told the rest of the family. And a while later, the boyfriend was killed, probably by Maya's uncles. Maya stopped talking after that because she thought it was her words that had gotten the man killed. That's some heavy stuff to put on a child. Over the years, she and her brother kept moving around. First they went back to their grandmother's, then to their mother's place in California this time. When they were living with their grandmother, Maya met a teacher who got her interested in books, and that helped her to speak again. Then in California, before she'd even finished high school, she started living all those lives I mentioned. She became the first female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. Wow, I didn't know that. Then when she was 17, she became a mother. She worked a lot of jobs to support herself and her son, including being a prostitute. She was open about that stuff later on, too. She was married for 3 years in the early 1950s and moved to New York City to study dance. She even performed in a nightclub dancing to calypso music. That's when she started calling herself Maya Angelou. Then she was in Porgy and Bess in Europe. And then she made a calypso album. I'm getting just tired just telling you all about it, and she wasn't even half finished yet. In the late 1950s, Maya started writing, and she also got involved in the civil rights movement after hearing Martin Luther King Jr. speak. She worked with King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but in the North. In the 1960s, she acted in the play The Blacks, and she lived in Africa and worked as a journalist, and she got tight with Malcolm X, And she made a TV documentary about black Americans in Africa called Blacks, Blues, Black? I'm running out of breath. He is. But that sister wasn't done yet. I'm getting to the stuff everybody knows about, though. At one point, she became friends with the writer James Baldwin, who encouraged her writing, and she published her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. As many things as she had done, that's what really made her famous. She was just getting started as a writer, though. By the time she died in 2014, she'd written 6 more books of autobiography, Gather Together in My Name, Singin' and Swingin', and Getting Merry Like Christmas. Well, that's all one title, I see. Singin' and Swingin' and Getting Merry Like Christmas. The Heart of a Woman, All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes, A Song Flung Up to Heaven, and Mom and Me and Mom. She published a whole bunch of poetry, too. Classic, extraordinary poetry. With all her accomplishments, they ran out of awards and honorary degrees to give her. They almost had to start some new colleges so there'd be more degrees for her. And I'm going to finish up our episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. We should definitely finish this chapter in the next episode. Thanks for joining me.